guys all kind of up and running, but it's fascinating to think that you're going to have this journey at everything level. You said the row.
This meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission is called to order. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We will first do a roll call vote. For those of you joining virtually, if you can please let us know if there's anyone else in the room with you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Here.
Commissioner Allman. Here. Commissioner Dieter. Commissioner Matlock.
Present and no one in the room.
Commissioner Perry.
Present, no one's in the room.
Commissioner Rader.
Present.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Stafford.
Present.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Comptroller Mumpower. Commissioner Morrison.
Here and alone.
Chairwoman, you have 12 members present and 11 voting members present.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The first item is to adopt our agenda for today's meeting. With no questions or objections, I'll entertain a motion and a second to adopt the agenda.
Move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Any further conversation? Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman.
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wood.
Aye.
Secretary Hargett.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. The next item on the is public comment. Dr. Gentile, do we have received any requests for public comment for this commission meeting?
Chair Scarlett, we did receive a request to speak from a student. Is Julia Lewis present? Okay.
Okay.
She's not here.
Very well. Well. Yeah. So next we have approval of the minutes. So with no questions or objections, I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes from May 15th of this year.
Motion. Second.
Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett.
Aye.
Commissioner Allman. Aye. Commissioner Matlock.
Aye.
Commissioner Perry.
Aye.
Commissioner Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford.
Aye.
Commissioner Wood. Secretary Hargett. Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 11 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Next, we will hear from Dr. Michael Lakari, President of Austin Peay University. Welcome. You're recognized.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairwoman Scarlett, Commissioners, Executive Director Gentile. It is my honor to host you all here at Austin Peay State University, and I hope in the time that you've spent on campus and in Clarksville that you see what I see every day, a vibrant and growing university in a vibrant and growing community. Clarksville, Montgomery County is the fastest growing community in the state, and Austin Peay has been the fastest growing LGI in the state, or depending on the year, the fastest growing of all public universities in the state at some point in the last 3 years. And last year we hit record enrollment. Like our community's growth, Austin Peay's growth is not by accident. It is the result of a tremendous work from across campus to engage prospective students and their families, but it is also the result of specific efforts to position Austin Peay in a unique way and offer a compelling value proposition. Our tuition and mandatory fees are low, the second lowest in the state. I think our colleagues down I-24 at TSU have us beat by a couple $100. But 2 years ago, we launched the Tuition Free at Austin Peay initiative, which means that students coming from any Tennessee household making less than $75,000 a year can come to Austin Peay and pay no tuition or mandatory fees. And we guarantee that every incoming student, undergraduate student, will have up to $2,000 during their time here to use for an out-of-classroom learning experience, a study abroad, or a research opportunity. So our students know that they can afford to come to Austin Peay, complete a high-quality undergraduate degree, and graduate with the experiences that they need to be competitive in the job market. And I am proud to say that 59% of last year's graduates graduated from Austin Peay State University with 0 student loan debt. So we're bucking those national trends and narratives that are out there regarding enrollment challenges and student loan debt. And I'm grateful for the inspiring work that's done on a daily basis by the faculty and staff here. Austin Peay is in a great position in the higher education landscape in Tennessee. You know, enrollment growth, though, and compelling value propositions are great, but they don't automatically translate into high-quality academic experiences for our students, so we work hard to be the first, the best, or the only university in Tennessee to offer certain programs and initiatives. The first-time pass rate on the licensure exam for our nursing graduates often hits 100%. Occasionally, it dips down to, 97% or something like that, but it's always well above the state average. And so I call our nursing program the best in Tennessee. Our radiologic science program was a finalist last year for best program in the country, alongside Johns Hopkins, Stanford, and the Mayo Clinic. Pretty good company. These two examples speak to the importance of our healthcare programs and the top-notch learning environment that they now have in the new health professions building, and our ability to help grow the healthcare workforce in the state, especially as 2 new hospitals are about to move into Clarksville, Montgomery County. Our ability to grow that healthcare workforce is greatly improved. We have the state's only rotor wing academic program, leading to a bachelor's degree and FAA certifications in helicopters. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the teacher apprenticeship program that was started at Austin Peay, but our College of Education is innovating in other ways, such as offering Tennessee's first and only so far registered apprenticeship program for school principals. Our College of Education teacher candidates also have the highest first-time pass rate in Tennessee on the state's early literacy assessment. Austin Peay was also the first to offer a concentration in artificial intelligence, backed by a comprehensive AI training program available for all students, faculty, and staff. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the AACSB accreditation that was just received by the College of Business. So I think you can see that we're all proud of what Austin Peay offers in terms of affordability, while offering some of the best academic experiences in the state. I think we have the most compelling value proposition in Tennessee. Finally, I'd like to speak a little bit about what also makes Austin Peay special, which is our military-affiliated population, student population. Fully 1/3 of our enrollment is military-affiliated, up from about 22% 5 years ago. This means they're active duty, Guard members, reserve, veterans, dependents, or veteran spouses that are using military benefits. And the growth in military enrollment is also by design. We started offering in-state tuition to any military-affiliated student anywhere in the world back in 2022. And as a result, we have military-affiliated students enrolled from 39 states and in 9 countries, depending on where they're stationed or deployed. Additionally, we dropped our graduate tuition rate for students in uniform to $250 per credit, which is the federal tuition assistance rate, so that uniformed personnel can earn a graduate degree from Austin Peay without paying tuition out of pocket. To support our military-affiliated students, we launched the Division of Military and Veterans Affairs 3 years ago. This placed all 27 staff members in one unit, headed by Vice President Walt Lord, who retired from the United States Army as a Major General. The support structure we have in place was recognized by THEC last year as the state's first Vets Bravo campus, and so far the only university with that designation. All of this, coupled with our proximity to Fort Campbell, allows us to partner very closely with the United States Army. One example is the Army Medical Department Enlisted Commissions Program, which provides opportunities for enlisted soldiers to earn a bachelor's degree in nursing and thus also commission as an officer. We are just one of 14 universities in the country that is authorized to host these students. And between 50 and 60 students each year are selected by the Army to participate in this program across the country, and 40% of those students choose Austin Peay. And just yesterday, we were designated a medical education training campus. This partnership also allows enlisted personnel in the Army, Navy, and Air Force to earn medical and healthcare degrees from Austin Peay more quickly as we grant credit for prior military experience. So to wrap up, I'm sure it's pretty clear that I'm incredibly proud of our faculty, our staff, and our students. I'm grateful for the support that we receive from the Commission, the THEC staff, the Governor, and the state legislature. Tennessee is blessed to have such strong support for higher education, and I hope that you see that Austin Peay State University is a worthy investment of those public dollars. So thank you, and as always, let's go Peay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Akari. Does anyone have any questions about Austin Peay or about the work happening here? Well, I applaud the work. Yes, Treasurer.
I just want to thank Dr. Licari and the staff at Austin Peay for their great hospitality and leadership in connection with our meeting and the tour that they gave us yesterday of the campus. You led it yourself personally, and that was very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Lillard, and I would be remiss if I didn't give all of the credit to Dr. Carol Clark, my Chief of Staff. So, Carol, thank you.
One quick question. I know with the 2 different hospitals that are opening up here and the amount of nurses we need, what does the pipeline look like for nurses coming out of Austin Peay right now? How many graduates?
So we graduate, it depends. It's usually somewhere around 40 to 50 per cohort, which, so we graduate a few cohorts per year depending on the pathway. We have a traditional bachelor's degree. We've got these Army-connected ones. We also have RN to BSN programs, so it depends on which cohort you're entering. But as you know, our ability to single-handedly keep up with the demand for nurses is non-existent, right? So we're always looking for partnerships, especially with these new hospitals that are moving in to grow the capacity to take on more students. Nursing, obviously, is a highly regulated and accredited academic program for good reasons. And so we have to make sure that our student-to-faculty ratios are good so that we can maintain our expectations of high quality while educating more students.
Well, thank you, and I echo the comments the Treasurer had. Thank you very much for hosting us.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Well, good morning again, everyone on the commission and beyond. I would like for you guys to think about something. I just want you to imagine something for just a moment. Maybe put away your phones and imagine, this might be harder for some than others, but I want you to imagine when you're 18 years old. And think about everything that was rushing in your brain right then. You graduated from high school, trying to think about what's next. Everyone in here was in a different place. But for the most part, I think many people would be a little bit unsure. What's next? What am I doing? Some of us were definitely going off to college. Some might be going to military. Some had no clue what was going on. I'm going to hold that for a moment. I'm going to share a story. I went and visited some of the other communities across Middle Tennessee recently and spent some time with their leadership. And the common connection I heard among these communities was the connection and the hope that adults in the room, leaders in these communities, had for those kids, for the students that were going through the K-12 system, stepping into what was next, and even the connection with the chambers of commerce and the mayors. A common theme, too, was there's a lot of kids that are moving on to something great. There's also some of those kids that are just going to fall through the cracks. And over the years, we've done an amazing work across the education system to really connect all of those dots for students. But there's still going to be some of those students that fall through. There were 2 examples that were given to me. 2 students just graduated, 2 boys who just graduated from a high school, and they wanted to go on, and so one wanted to go into welding, one wanted to go into go down an electrician's path, and they were waitlisted. So I want you to think back to your 18-year-old self and you get on a wait list. That's a really heavy thing. Because what's going to be next, especially in a community where you do not have the resources and the other connections beyond the fast food restaurant? It's just a really hard place to be. What we have promised students in this amazing state is that in Tennessee, it will be the door to education after high school. That door will be open. The Tennessee Promise proved that out. When was that created? 10 years ago? 15 years ago? 11. We've opened up those doors. Another part of this journey, which I'm not part of my original thought of comments, but many of you have probably heard these concepts of the bell-to-bell, you may or may not, but so bell-to-bell strategies are now where high schools choose to have phones off from the time students step in the door to the time they leave the door at the end of the day, beginning first bell and last bell. But when there's less distraction in life, more accomplishments happen. One school happened to tell me they had 800 less disciplinary issues and 150 less out-of-school suspensions. That's really big. If we can help continue to focus students to go down these pathways, we're going to fill the jobs that we have today and help them create the jobs that we'll have tomorrow for our amazing state. What we've done is we've built a really amazing infrastructure behind this promise that there's life after high school. Technical programs, associate's degrees, we'll have transfer pathways that connect all of those that could potentially take you into a 4-year pathway or a bachelor's degree without missing a step. But in other places, we still have barriers. In other places, those doors aren't really open, they're closed. And that gap between what we've built and what students actually experience is a perception problem that we cannot ignore. We've got to continue to open up those doors and help those students along the journey. That kind of change doesn't really happen overnight. It takes a period of time. It takes time and it takes consistency of effort, because where we put our money and what we measure is what gets done. There's 3 items on the agenda today, which I think started a great conversation yesterday in our committee meetings. One is a focused bachelor's degree program. For years, we've talked about shifting the conversation from just degrees to truly viable pathways. This has the potential to open up a lot of pathways for people maybe changing careers, or maybe students that need to have more of a direct route. But today's changes allow institutions to meet the market where it is, not where it used to be. You all have heard me say before the story of Blockbuster, right? I don't know if you all remember this, but Blockbuster was in, we all used to go get the VHS. Now they're all coming back, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about back in the day. We used to go to the VHS store. We'd go spend forever looking at what movie we're going to get, and we've rented it, and we'd go home, and we put it in our VHS player, and we'd watch a movie and eat popcorn and pizza. Well, then Netflix came along. Netflix changed everything. It changed the way almost everyone in here is watching Netflix, is streaming, some sort of streaming platform. We don't want our post-secondary education systems to be the Blockbusters of the world. We want to be the Netflix, because that's where our students are. So this concept of a focused bachelor's degree helps institutions meet the market. Another conversation point today is the outcomes formula changes. What gets funded gets prioritized, and what gets prioritized gets built. In our conversation today, we're putting some high-demand credentials at the front of that formula. I know there was some rich conversation yesterday. I look forward to hearing more of that committee meeting conversation. But also, in putting forward high-demand credentials, it's telling every institution in Tennessee very plainly what the state needs from them, what our communities and our employers need. And the last agenda item I just want to pull out, which I think is going to be really quite fascinating, is our first review of how financial aid is actually functioning on the ground. We spent years getting students in the door. Now we can find out whether that aid is really working inside the building or not. One more thing before we turn to the agenda. Stephen has been rebuilding relationships across the state, resetting how the agency works with institutions, and turning a lot of what I've just described into something that is actually getting done. It's been 3 years since we named Dr. Stephen Gentile as THEC's executive director, And I just want to say thank you to you and your team for the amazing work that you've been doing. So thank you. With that, let's get started with our executive director's report.
Thank you, Chair Scarlett. I can't believe it's been 3 years. It seems like 2.5 years, probably. No, it's been a good time, and the staff has been just fantastic all along. All the innovation coming from them, the partnerships that they have with institutions and our higher ed ecosystem. I want to take a moment to echo again. We could do this all day long. My appreciation and thanks to Austin Peay State University. As I said last night at dinner, I think we conceived the idea of coming here about 8 months ago. From the moment I reached out to President Licari, everything just was as smooth as butter to get to this point. So President Licari, thank you. Carol Clark, thank you as well. Brandy Duke, are you in the room right now? All the way there in the back, thank you for everything that you've done. Dr. Tucker and your IT team as well, thank you so much for making today possible. Is General Walt Lord in the room? Okay, sir. Last year, we had the ability to visit you and present this campus with the VETS Bravo designation. VETS Bravo is a new designation in statute that recognizes institutions that go beyond what the current, at the time, VETS designation, which nearly all of our public institutions and a number of our private institutions have the VETS designation that symbolizes that they do well by vet students, student veterans on their campus. And they meet a couple of conditions to make that possible. Austin Peay last year was the very first institution in the state to go another level up, a higher level up, and that expands VETS designation to helping students who are not just student veterans, but active military students, the dependents of military and veterans as well. Austin Peay has done a phenomenal job in that regard. If you get a chance, and if it's open later today, I encourage you to walk to the space here on campus that's designated specifically for veterans and military-affiliated students. It's a phenomenal place. And it's also right down the road from Johnny's, so you guys can get that famous dessert that President Licari told us about yesterday. But I also want to recognize a new institution that's joined the ranks of VETS Bravo. We informed the institution 2 days ago. That is President Cliff Whiteman of TCAT Upper Cumberland. He has done a phenomenal job on his campus of making that campus friendly and open towards those who are, again, dependents of veterans and military affiliated. This is the first TBR institution. It's the first institution outside of Austin Peay. So we look forward to celebrating with them in the coming weeks on that regard. In the audience, I want to welcome Dr. Noland. I see President Torres here. Cam Khan from Takua. Dr. Khan is here. Flora Tidings from Tennessee Board of Regents. I see all my fun CFO crew. We're hosting the CFO forum of all of our institutions this afternoon. Everyone who's here today visiting, welcome to you. Another couple of quick announcements before I get into my what I want to talk to you on the agenda here. Last week, my staff made fun of me as I was on a one-on-one call with Commissioner Stafford, and he informed me. They made fun of me because of the move I did afterwards of celebration. I think I did an air guitar. Is that right? And learning that last week, Lieutenant Governor McNally has reappointed Vernon Stafford to our commission for another 6-year term. We had been hoping that would be the case. I think the presidents I know that are in this room and others, like you advocate for having people on your commission who don't make your life easier. It's how can they help us move the organization forward? And you've been on the commission now 2018, 2017? 2017. He has never stopped trying to find a way to make the work that we do here better. And he keeps our feet to the fire on that regard. And he has been a huge value add to this commission, and we are excited to have him here for another 6 years, and we appreciate Lieutenant Governor McNally for appointing him again. Looking forward to this agenda, I just want to echo some of the things and bring some of my perspective to what we're talking about here on the agenda. Number one, focused baccalaureate degrees. In that master plan that we passed earlier this year, there's a lot of effort put into that plan, talking about putting the head of higher education, putting higher education on its head, and re-examining what we do and how we do things. And we actually mentioned considering a 90 credit hour baccalaureate degree as something that we could use moving forward to help meet students where they are. My perspective on focused baccalaureate degrees, 90 credit hour baccalaureate degrees, I'll take a step back and say there is a lot of chatter right now about these. They're relatively brand new to higher education. They've been in some parts of the country in action for the last few years, but just now new to the South as the major accrediting body has allowed for them to come forward. I don't want to speak, I think Secretary Hargett did a good job of saying this yesterday, of pitting one degree versus another. We're trying to open up and make sure that students from different backgrounds have access to a bachelor degree if it furthers their career, it furthers their life. General education provides breadth when it comes to an experience and teaching students a whole different way of thinking, speaking, understanding the world, and it provides a good opportunity and springboard for the real world in that breadth. Major content provides that depth. I was an economics major. I think through life and all the challenges I have from a very economic perspective. Others have different ways of viewing it. That typically would formulate what's 90 credit hours of a degree like this. Moving from 120 to 90, what we're leaving on the table for students are a couple of things. One, electives. And that's primarily what I believe will be addressed in reducing from 120 to 90 credit hours. Electives provide a lot of good opportunities for students to explore beyond their general ed. It also provides opportunities for double major, triple major, rounding out a major that, let's say a liberal arts major that may be more enhanced with workforce-oriented degrees, credentials as well. Those are still valuable, but there are students out there, I go to thinking about the 750,000 some college no credit adult learners out there, or potential adult learners, who don't need that exploration opportunity or don't want that double major or that triple major. This focused baccalaureate degree may be something that allows them to actually enter back into higher education and get a credential, and a credential that we think will have value. The policy that Dr. Roberts and her team and institutional partners have helped put together ensures that direct alignment to the workforce, and unlike any other program that we're approving, requires a work-based learning opportunity as well. That said, this is new. This is new to higher education in the States. A 3-year degree is not new to higher education worldwide, but it is new here, and it's going to be new here in Tennessee. We are committed to a couple things. First of all, evaluating the programs as they come forward, but on the back end, on the outcomes. Are students getting jobs in the fields? Are they getting good premium wages from that as well? Do they have difficulty getting into grad school? These are things that we intend to track. That I promise to you. Second, you did give us the ability to delegate to the executive director opportunities to approve academic programs. Given that this is new to the field, I would greatly prefer that as these come forward, that we share them with you and that we do not pull the delegation, because we want you to have viewing and approval of the programs, especially the new ones, as they come forward. Second, moving on to lottery. We will hear later today from our external partners at University of Michigan. At the February commission meeting, we heard from Julia Dieter, who is a student commissioner of ours. It would be great to hear from students. Part of what we're going to hear today in our observations from University of Michigan are the interviews that we've had with students about the lottery program, what's working, what's not, interviews that we had with financial aid offices, in addition to objective data evaluation of how we can track the outcomes of that. I look forward to that conversation. And the general conversation about lottery, we intend to, in the fall, with our education partners, stakeholders, and the General Assembly, Governor's Office, to bring forward recommendations, and then more intently work with you one-on-one and then in the commission on what options to consider moving forward to address the current lottery shortfall. With regards to this fiscal year, you will know, with regards to fiscal year 26, the last fiscal year, we still don't know where we're landing on total expenditures versus revenue. We will know in the coming weeks. As I shared at the last commission meeting, there is in statute a requirement that if you dip into the $100 million reserve, that there would be a pro rata reduction in the following fiscal year to scholarships to meet projections, to right-size the portfolio. In conversations with the administration, General Assembly, but more acutely, we've had a conversation with the AG's office, the Attorney General's office. It is our understanding with their guidance that we don't have to pull the pro rata lever immediately. More importantly, we can wait for a session to come back into place in the spring to address an issue if we are to dip into the reserve. So in May, I said, my concern is that we would have to do a pro rata reduction immediately for this fiscal year. The guidance we've gotten is that we do not have to. We can wait for General Assembly to come into session, and that is the preferred route should we go into that reserve. And then finally, the formula. We heard extensively yesterday about the updates to the outcomes-based formula, our recommendations more specifically. This formula is going to prioritize on-time completion. It is looking differently at dual enrollment, should you guys approve it. Dual enrollment is not just a head count measure, but making sure students are earning credits, and we'll measure that on the back end, a true, more outcome-based. And finally, it looks at our workforce investment premium that's been in place since 2022 and had a general, we will recognize with a premium, STEM plus healthcare, and uses a mathematical approach to actually identify majors who map on to occupations that are projected to grow in the future. So it takes a much more formulaic approach. And that's what we had intended to do 4 years ago, but didn't have the data at hand to make that possible. So I look forward to the discussion today and learning what we can learn about the lottery and hearing the discussion on focused baccalaureates and the outcomes funding formula. But I just want to appreciate your attention and your time today. So thank you. Chair Scarlett.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gentile. On to our regular calendar. Our first agenda item is,
You know what?
what?
I just had her mouth to me. I was like, what about me? I also wanted you guys to hear about Workforce Pell and Dr. Roberts. I'm sorry, Dr. Roberts.
You're up.
She put the slides all together.
It's like, wow, okay, canceled.
I was like, why are you talking to me like that?
He says that frequently, by the way, for the record.
On July 1, with the big beautiful bill that turned into law last year, an opportunity to change the financial aid portfolio at the federal level came through. I spoke to this briefly in May. This goes into effect, it went into effect July 1, where programs that were not eligible for financial aid are now going to be eligible for financial aid. Dr. Roberts has been working extensively with the Department of Labor and our partners at TN Works, Tennessee Board of Regents is a part of that as well, to identify a new policy on how we as a state will approve programs eligible for Workforce Pell. And Dr. Roberts, I apologize. I knew I was missing something, so thank you.
Well, we'll talk later. No, and I will be brief. I know we have a lot to cover today, but I do appreciate the time. And many thanks to my colleagues at the Department of Labor, specifically Jay Baker, who we've been walking hand in hand. I keep telling him he's my best friend. He hasn't reciprocated, so hopefully he's not watching. So Workforce Pell, just quickly, this is opening up eligibility for federal financial aid to programs that were previously excluded. And so Stephen did talk about this at the last meeting, but I wanted to just go over a couple of the high points. In order to be eligible, programs have to be high skill, high wage, or in demand. We've used existing definitions across the state as we established what that meant. And so for high skill, high wage, we went to the Perkins definition that we already have here in Tennessee. And for in demand, we aligned that with the supply and demand report. We, through the work of TN Works and other working groups that we have across state agencies, we've really been trying to leverage existing policies and definitions so that we have consistency as we're talking about different things and how we're defining them. Programs need to be short-term, They have to be stackable and portable. One of the things that has been really exciting about this work, many of you know and have been a part of conversations about how do we create pathways from all types of learning into more traditional degrees. And so one of the things with these short-term programs, they can be degreed or non-degree. And so regardless, they have to be aligned to a degree program. So really excited that this really accelerated that work that we'd already been engaged in. They also have to be in place for at least 1 year, so that's just one of those logistical kinds of things. There's some pretty hardy, I guess, accountability standards that are built into the federal legislation, which I won't go into the detail, happy to offline, but just know that these programs do have a high bar that they have to prove to us in order to maintain eligible to have students receive workforce Pell. So a couple things that have happened since we last talked about Workforce Pell. As Stephen mentioned, it did go into effect July 1. The State Workforce Development Board, who is the keeper of the policy and the list, held a special called meeting June 23rd to make sure our policy was approved before implementation. We posted the approved list of SIP codes. So SIP codes are those codes that are aligned with academic programs. And so in order to be eligible, the program that applies has to have one of the SIP codes that's on the eligibility list. And I need to thank our friends at SCORE who helped us with the data analysis for us to get that list. Originally, we had over 1,300 SIP codes, but then we realized that we hadn't filtered those by degree level. So we said, hey, let's actually think about what's reasonable for a student to get with these types of short-term training. And so we filtered that list down to anything that was associate's degree or lower. And so that gave us an ultimate list of just under 400 programs. Just so I thought you might be interested, based on SIP code designation, our top 4 areas of eligible programs: engineering technology programs, healthcare, agriculture, and business. And so I just thought that was interesting. So hopefully you do too. So our review process, we have an application that is available online at the Department of Labor's website. Once an institution decides to fill that out, it gets vetted by both THEC and Department of Labor. We're looking for things such as, are you authorized as a post-secondary institution in Tennessee? An important detail. Is your program on the SIP code list? Is it the right length? So we have a team that's going through and evaluating that as they come in. If a program is eligible, it will go to the State Workforce Development Board for approval. Once it is approved, that then goes to the governor's office, who then sends it to the U.S. Department of Education. Then the institution is able to start accepting aid from students that are eligible for Workforce Pell. So we haven't had a ton of programs apply. We've had less than 10, and unfortunately, none of them have been eligible. As we've been getting them in the pipeline, we've realized our communication strategy needs to be a little stronger. So what we're planning to do, us and Department of Labor are planning to do a webinar for institutions just generally about what it takes to apply, what does it mean to be eligible. We're meeting with our friends from TBR to talk about their programs and what they're thinking there as well. And then we're hopeful we'll have a couple of vetted programs for the next meeting of the State Workforce Development Board on August 28th. So that's my quick update. But happy for any questions if there are any.
Anyone have any questions? I have a quick question.
Sure.
You said there's 400 SIP codes. We already know what programs the current institutions in Tennessee have. Isn't there a way just to marry those so they don't have to go through an application process?
Well, so that's where Tennessee Board of Regents comes in, because we do have a good sense of their programs, but we don't have a good sense in the same way, because we do keep the academic program inventory of our public institutions. But for our private and our for-profits, we don't have the same sense. So
Okay.
it's a good question. And the other thing I didn't mention, just because we have the list of SIP codes, it's not actually aligned with the programs we have in the state. So some of those SIP codes that are on there aren't necessarily programs we have currently.
Got it. Thank you so much.
If I can just add a couple of items to this. I know that I'm looking forward to that meeting with the Tennessee Board of Regents. I know they've been chomping at the bit for this, and they have not submitted applications yet. They're putting their ducks in a row for that. Two, in the grand picture of everything financial aid and how things relate, just so that you're aware, there is a projected $17 billion deficit in the Pell program. That's something that's on the feet of our federal delegation right now. And there's been, I believe, in President Trump's recommended budget some months ago, some identification of how to bridge that together. In a conversation that I had and several people here with the Undersecretary of Education, they're excited for the growth in these programs, but it's all coming from the same pot as well. It's coming from the same Pell pot as well. So, we'll be watching the growth in these over the years, but also looking to see how does that impact the overall financial aid Pell picture. And Pell directly relates to our own state financial aid programs, as Promise and Reconnect depend on having healthy Pell grants to help make those finances work.
Can I add quickly, Stephen? We anticipated this first year not to have a lot of approved programs, and that's not just a Tennessee concern. It's just the structure of them. A lot of programs aren't already built that way, so we assume some programs will shift, but that the rule that I mentioned earlier, but they have to be in existence for at least a year, will delay them being eligible for Workforce Pell, potentially. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Okay, on to our regular calendar. Our first item on our agenda is the Audit Committee update. Commissioner Stafford, Chairman of the Audit Committee, will provide us an update. Commissioner Stafford.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. First, let me just say that it is a
Jimmy,
privilege.
Matt Lott.
Is now exiting.
Jimmy! I thought we were friends, Jimmy. Let me first say that it is a privilege and a pleasure to serve on this commission board. I've had the opportunity to really interact with each of my fellow commissioners, and this board really does some very important work, but does it with a tremendous commitment to really serving the citizens of Tennessee. So thanks to each of you. Yesterday, we had the opportunity, the Audit Committee did, to hear from our THEC internal auditor, Doug Cullum. He presented 2 recently completed audits, and the first one was the FAST system, the Financial Aid System of Tennessee, which is a high-risk system and a very important system. That report was rated satisfactory. While it's got high risk, the controls that are in place are deemed effective. And the second report was that for the policies and procedures area, and that report also was considered satisfactory. We then heard from Stone Watson, who presented the first report on the recently staff-developed institutional financial data system. And that was in response to a data error that was identified a couple of years ago due to the high manual data processing of that system at the time. Fortunately, the staff has really responded tremendously well, and they have developed established a reduced human manipulation system, and that system now is in operation. The Commission and the Board will receive a more conclusive update on that system in the future. And then finally, Doug returned and presented to the committee the THEC risk category structure, and in response to that, the audit universe that is in effect to monitor that structure. The committee also received a presentation of the proposed 2027 audit plan, but we tabled approval of that plan to ensure that we have a full understanding and vetting of the plan before approval. And that is my report, Madam Chairwoman.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Commissioner Stafford. Any questions about the Audit Committee or comments? Okay, excellent. Next up, we have the University of Memphis data severance. Treasurer Lillard, Chairman of the Finance and Operations Committee, will provide our overview of the agenda item and the committee's recommendation. Treasurer?
Madam Chair, your committee met yesterday and heard from technical director on this item, and after discussion and thorough consideration, the item was approved and recommended for approval and adoption by the commission. I move its adoption.
Do I hear a sec? Any questions or further conversation about this item? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock, Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Wonderful, motion carries. The next item we'll be talking about is new academic programs, the Civic and Constitutional Thought Bachelor of Arts and Industrial Design Bachelor of Fine Arts, both from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Commissioner Allman, Chair of the Access, Academics, and Student Success Committee, will provide an overview of the agenda item and the committee's recommendation.
Yes, 2 academic programs were presented yesterday to the Access, Academics, and Student Success Committee, both for UT Knoxville by Dr. Zomchik. It was a positive conversation amongst committee members, and I'm pleased to share that both programs were approved by the committee. I move to approve.
Any further conversations or comments? Okay, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matlock, Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Wonderful. Motion carries. Next up, we have Jackson State Community College Campus Master Plan. Treasurer Lillard, please provide us an overview of that agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Your committee on Finance and Operations met yesterday and considered this matter on Jackson State Community College's Campus Master Plan proposal, and Dr. Rothstein, the president of the college, made a presentation, and after debate and discussion, the committee adopted it and recommended it to the commission for approval. Move its approval.
Second.
Any questions or comments in regards to this master plan? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Treasurer Lillard, back to you.
All right, Madam Chair, you're on the next item, item 5, Motlow State Community College Campus Master Plan. Your Finance and Operations Committee met yesterday on this matter as well, and Dr. Torrance, the president of the college, made a presentation on this, and after debate and discussion, the committee approved it and recommended it for approval to the commission, and I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments about the Motlow State plan? Hearing none, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
I'm just going to throw out a comment. I don't remember, the committees have been put in place 3 years ago? Is that right? It seems that things move a lot smoother when we're able to have those in-depth conversations in the committee meetings, and then we'll come here, we're able to make quick decisions. I also want to remind everyone that everyone's invited to each of the committee meetings, so please feel free to show up and have further conversation during those, but it certainly has created a more fluid process here. That being said, let's move on to the transmission of the 26-27 proposed operating budgets. Treasurer Lillard, can you please provide us an update of this agenda?
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee on Finance and Operations met on this item also as well, and after consideration of this and a presentation by THEC staff, we adopted it and recommended for approval to the commission, and I so move.
Second.
Sort of comments or questions do we have about this topic? Okay. Hearing none, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Dr. Gentile.
For those who weren't watching this meeting yesterday, I just want to take a moment. We had the CFO of Tennessee State University, April Robinson, come and speak as well virtually on it. And just for the good of the whole body and the audience, last year, Tennessee State University's incoming freshman class was between 450 and 490, which was much lower, much lower than usual. And President Tucker put a goal out there to have 1,200 students in the freshman class, which was necessary given the financial picture, but also a huge audacious goal to make happen. Something that we heard yesterday, and I've been in lots of conversations with President Tucker, but heard from April Robinson. Right now, they have implemented a better enrollment management strategy on the front end, but also on the back end, where they're requiring deposits for their students as they come in, a common practice. At this moment, they have 2,000 paid deposits coming for freshman class next year. There will be melt. There will be summer melt. They are anticipating that, as all institutions do. And so right now, they're projecting between 1,500 and 1,600 in that freshman class. And that has been solid recruitment done in the right way, and I'm excited for Tennessee State University, but it also informs on their proposed budget. So I just want to update the commission there. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll add to that and say that during the discussion that we had on Tennessee State University, as Dr. Gentile pointed out, we had a representative from the university's finance area there and talked to us during the meeting, and I questioned her a good deal about the future plans for the university and their future track as they see them from a finance standpoint. One thing that was discussed during the meeting is the state gave an infusion of about $25 million to Tennessee State this last year, and without that, they would have been negative on cash flow. So from that standpoint, they've got a good bit of progress, as Dr. Gentile has pointed out, and we complimented them on the progress that has been made. But we also pointed out, of course, that they have many hard roads ahead of them to travel to get the university back to where it really should be, and that remains their premier goal, and we appreciate their efforts in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional context. Next agenda item is the rulemaking hearing rule revision, chapter, nope. Yes, I skipped it.
7, the
Yes,
focus
we're gonna-
baccalaureate
we're gonna go to
degrees.
focus, yeah, we're going backwards.
Or you're going
I'm-
backwards.
No, I am. We're going to
Okay.
focus back.
So you're on number 8 now?
No,
Or
I'm
rulemaking, you're on number 9.
I'm going back up to 7.
Oh, you're going to 7.
Yep, sure am. That'll be the next agenda item, is the focus baccalaureate degree approval process. Commissioner Allman will provide an overview of that agenda item.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would like for Dr. Julie Roberts, Chief Academic Officer, to come forward to be able to answer any questions the commission may have. Dr. Julie Roberts provided an overview of the approval process policy for focused bachelor degrees to the Access Academics and Student Success Committee yesterday. I would like to share that quite a bit of robust conversation was had, and I would personally like to thank everyone for sharing their insight and contributing to this discussion. Also, a request was made to receive information on SAC COC credit hours, which is currently set at 25% for an institution, and have more information shared with the committee for future discussion. I am pleased to share that the proposed focused bachelor degree approval process passed unanimously by the committee as it was presented. I motion for approval.
What other further questions or comments do we have for ourselves and for Dr. Roberts?
If I could
Yes.
just maybe ask one
Commissioner
quick
Wood.
question, and I had some connectivity issues yesterday during the committee meeting. I'm curious how we see communication to students around these programs and around some of the limitations that they will have?
That's an excellent question, and honestly, we haven't had a ton of conversation about that. So I will say, per the SAC-COC guidelines, there does have to be some information included with the credentials, mentioning that there may have some challenges with graduate school, not challenges, that's not how it's worded, but so there is that. I think as we're going through and thinking about the development alongside our campus partners, that'll be part of the conversation and something that I know is top of mind for them, because part of this, they're trying to appeal to likely a different type of student population. So I would think that that's part of it. As they go through our new academic program approval process, there is a section in there that speaks about student demand. So that will be a part of that process. But it's a question I don't have a complete answer on. So.
Thank you. And I absolutely support this path. I think your analogy around we're moving into the future and kind of, it's hard to imagine today even walking into a store to go get a movie, right? And so I do think this is a great thing. And then the work-based learning component to this is really key.
Thank you.
If I can add on to that, Mr. Wood, also a big consideration is how do we help employers understand what they're getting whenever they hire one of these students. So there's not only communication with students, there's got to be a lot of communication that goes on in the workforce. And we did have a robust discussion. Dr. Smith had a lot of excellent points he brought up yesterday that, 120 hours is an arbitrary number. Frankly, 90 is an arbitrary number. We may reach a point in the future, we look at some of these degrees and think that's a different number, give or take some, I don't know. But this is really geared toward, in my opinion, a lot more of non-traditional students who've been out in the workforce, been in the military, whatever, and they're coming back in and they're not ready, they don't need to take pickleball. They don't need to take history of chocolate to get them back out in the workforce and get them to where they want to be and on with their careers. And much more movement to, as we talked about, more competency-based degrees instead of trying to think about a set number of hours. But Dr. Smith, I would love for you to interject with the chairman's permission.
Well, this is the Hargett-Smith show. We are booked at the Ryman the next week to reprise this discussion. And I thank Secretary Hargett for his summary. My concern with this is that we cannot abandon the student upon the graduation with this degree. It is so new and so radically different than what is expected in the marketplace that in spite of the fact that we have strong support from industry and work force groups that are looking forward to this, there is still a high risk. And it is, at my judgment, it is the institution's responsibility to assure that that student is not at risk post-graduation. And one way of doing that is that the deliverables are clear, they are unquestionable, and they are demonstrable in a way that meets those workforce needs. And that proof will be in the presentation of programs for approval. What we're doing here is establishing the guidelines, but the real evidence is going to be, and the hard conversations are going to be when presentations are made by institutions. And that's where I spread this out a little bit in the conversation yesterday, and that is, have we gone far enough? I mean, when we're talking about this as being something that is to meet the needs, then we are saying that we're looking at a competency-based degree program. And a competency-based degree program means that there are ways for demonstrating those competencies that do not require seat time. They could be prior learning assessments such that the individual is given credit for that. There could be a variety of other different ways in which the individual demonstrates that they meet the standards that the institution has set that are demonstrable in the workforce itself. And so, as each of you that are
planning on making proposals for this, be very, very conscious of the rigor that we expect in the approval of the programs themselves. There were two recommendations that I wanted to make yesterday, and I forgot one of them, but Director Gentile made the point. I think this is so important that I appreciate that he's suspending doing delegated decision-making on it, so that each one of these comes before the commission for each of us to examine and to grow along this path. And in the process of growing along this path is the second recommendation, and that is for there to be a rigorous analysis of not only the process that is necessary to complete the degree, but what happens to post-degree. And that ties into a discussion we'll have in a few minutes about the outcome-based formula, because we're moving more and more in the outcome-based formula for demonstrable outcomes. We may have some heartburn about how that is exactly done, but make no mistake, there is an expectation that an individual who leaves with a degree in Tennessee is an individual that the economy can count on to make a positive difference in the lives of all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Wonderful comments. A couple more things that came out of the committee yesterday, but for those of the benefit who weren't watching CNN to watch the replay of that committee meeting last night. One, this is not meant to be a substitute necessary for your programs, the 120-hour programs. This is not for everybody. It doesn't preclude somebody from going and get a 120-hour degree if you want to. I mean, I've yet to know of a campus yet that said, no, you can't take that many electives. Normally they're happy to do that. So that's important. Also, I want to point out that we were very intentional about how we named these focused baccalaureate degrees. There's a lot of conversation nationally, many among our surrounding states with the SAC-CLC graciously determined at their last meeting they were not going to be in the naming business, which was a shift from a few months earlier when there was a lot of reluctance to even allow these to be called baccalaureate degrees, bachelor's degrees. And so, I'm hopeful that we are leading also in how we name these. I think it's appropriate that they are bachelor's degrees, that they are called focus degrees, because they're a more intense focus level of study on those skills that you are supposed to be getting to be ready for the workforce. There are those states out there that have some names like applied and others that might seem to create a diminished level of what you have learned. And we're being really intentional here about naming it in such a way that's going to give the students something they can walk into that job interview with something in their hand and be able to help that employer understand, too, what they're getting when you hire this person.
That brings up a question that I have, actually. I think it was UTK has the applied engineering degree, and now we've got the focused bachelor degrees. I would encourage institutions, and maybe also as you're going through this kind of understanding more about what this is really going to be for students, is that we continue with the ability to have on-ramps and off-ramps into these programs. I think someone mentioned yesterday that if you get this degree, you might not be able to go on and get a master's degree. Well, how do we not create those barriers? There's some program, I think when you go to a community college, there's a pathway where you cannot get an associate's degree. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head. It's like, why do we create those barriers as opposed to opening up doors? So I just encourage you as you're going down the pathway, and institutions are coming to us with ideas tied to these focused degrees, that we're talking about intentionally what's next for the student. How do students learn about it? Is it the right path for them? And then what happens if they decide they want to pursue something else afterwards?
And that's been so top of mind through our conversations. And I know that some of our campuses that are actively developing these types of programs have that as baked into it. And that's something we'll keep an eye out and work with our campus partners. We've seen so much innovation over the last several years. I'm thinking about the Memphis Bachelor's of Applied Science we just had a couple meetings ago, and how they've weaved in so many ways for students to transfer from TCAT to bring in credit for prior learning. So I agree, and I think it's something that's also a part of how our campuses have really been thinking about programs and how they get students in and through.
Excellent. What other questions do we have for Dr. Roberts? Do we have a wonderful one? Okay, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 8, not 7 or 9. It's the outcomes-based funding formula review. Treasurer Lillard, can you please provide us the committee's recommendations on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee on Business and Operations met on this matter yesterday, and after spirited discussion on several aspects of this, the committee approved it and recommended it for passage by a vote of 3 aye and 2 no. So there was quite a discussion about this particular item, so I move its adoption.
Second.
What sort of questions or comments do we have about this agenda item? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
No.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 9 ayes and 1 nay.
Okay, motion carries. Back to item 9, Treasurer Lillard, the rulemaking hearing, rule revision.
Madam Chair, the committee met on this item also, and after discussion, unanimously recommended its approval to this commission, and I move its approval.
Second.
Any questions or comments about this agenda item? Okay, hearing none, Madam Secretary.
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman,
Aye.
Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargit, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Excellent, motion carries. Next up are committee appointments. Per the THEC Rules of Procedure, or committee appointments for the Access, Academics, and Student Success Committee and the Finance and Operations Committee are confirmed on an annual basis.
That's right. Thank you, Chair Scarlett. Heather, can you progress the slide? I'm wondering if the slide is here. Okay, thank you, Heather. Every year around this time, we tend to have at least one new commissioner, and we use this as an opportunity to appoint that person to a committee, or also to offer up for anyone here who would like to change committees that opportunity to do so. The timing here is this. That is, in November is when we have a change in leadership of our commission. That happens every 2 years with chair, vice chairs, and secretary. But also, the committees will then appoint their own chairs for those committees. So setting the committees now so that in November they can vote on the leadership with those committees. We still do not have a new student commissioner. Technically, Julia Dieter is still our student commissioner. The governor's office is in current interviews with potential student commissioners. Julia could not join today. I believe she's having a good summer abroad right now. That said, I wanted to provide an opportunity here, if there's anyone here who wanted to switch committees, to voice so, and so that we can have a vote.
Okay, like I said earlier, you can always go visit, watch, hang out in the other committees, voice your opinion and perspectives. And I really encourage everyone to do so. It sounds like we are happy with our committees as they are. So we'll vote on these appointments as a slate. I entertain a motion in a second. Madam Secretary?
Chairwoman Scarlett,
Aye.
Commissioner Allman, Commissioner Perry,
Aye.
Commissioner Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Ragsdale, Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Stafford,
Aye.
Commissioner Wood, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Chairwoman, you have 10 ayes.
Excellent. Motion carries. Next up is the University of Michigan Research on the Hope Scholarship. I'd like to recognize Paige Elliott, Senior Director of Research and Strategy, to provide us an overview.
Good morning, Chair Scarlett, Director Gentile, members of the Commission. I'm excited to share with you today the culmination of several years of work to better understand the Hope Scholarship. You might recall, in May 2024, we shared with you that THEC and the University of Michigan had been awarded a grant from the Institute of Education Sciences. This grant, which awarded over $838,000 over a 3-year period, which concludes in spring 2027, was awarded under the National Center for Education Research's program using longitudinal data to support state education policymaking. And we still think that this is a really good example of how to do that. This partnership between the University of Michigan and THEC goes back nearly a decade, forming a strong partnership that ultimately resulted in the successful grant application. When the project began, the Michigan team came down to Nashville to meet with a variety of stakeholders about the work, including gubernatorial and representatives from the Board of Regents and from other institutions, and with THEC staff from across a variety of functions that touch the Hope Scholarship. From the start, we wanted this project to be rooted in policy and practice on the ground, rather than simply being an abstract academic exercise, although you will hear some academic data today, and we're excited to translate that for you. To that end, THEC staff have continued to meet with that research team, providing updates on policy changes in the state, and there have been quite a few, facilitating proper use of our data and informing the evolution of these research outputs and the direction of the research to ensure that the project results in tangible, useful outputs for stakeholders and for policymakers. Which brings us to today. The team's research comes at a pivotal moment for the state as we face a pressing need to rethink the full lottery scholarship portfolio. Importantly, this challenge does include all scholarship programs, but as you see in the graph, which you may remember from the February Commission meeting, any significant changes to the funding distributed by the lottery scholarship portfolio will likely have to touch the Hope Scholarship. The magnitude of Hope outpaces the other largest programs in the portfolio several-fold, as you can see here. So we hope that the findings shared today begin to shed light on how and why Hope is important to Tennessee students as we continue to consider crucial policy recommendations in the coming months. These researchers have conducted rigorous analysis of the program, providing findings that meet the highest standards of evidence available in the field of higher education research, which is a different way of saying that they are statistically significant. Additionally, as you'll hear, they've gone into the field to hear firsthand from students and from administrators on our campuses. But I'll leave it there and I won't steal too much of their thunder. So sharing their research with us today are Chen-Jun Yu and Jennifer Trigger. Chen-Jun and Jennifer are both doctoral candidates at the Marsall Family School of Education at the University of Michigan. They'll be joined by Joshua Skiles, THEC's data scientist, and also a former member of the research team on the University of Michigan side. I also want to give credit to the rest of the team that's here with us today. Dr. Brian McCall is the principal investigator on this project and is a professor of education, economics, and public policy at the University of Michigan. We're also joined by Melody Wang, a student at the University of Michigan who has contributed significantly to the project. And finally, we would like to thank Dr. Stephen Desjardins, professor of education at the University of Michigan, who could not be here today, but nevertheless has been a key contributor to this project. And with that, I will turn it over to the team to share their findings.
Good morning. Thank you, Paige. I'll move this up. Okay. So today we're going to start by sharing our main takeaways. We'll then discuss what we did, how we did it, what we found, and then we will conclude with our next steps. So our project encompasses both a quantitative analysis and a qualitative analysis. Together with our partners here in Tennessee, we set out to identify the important metrics where we really wanted to understand the effect of hope. So we studied the effect of both receiving and keeping hope on academic outcomes such as college enrollment, transfer from 2-year to 4-year, persistence into the second year of college, and college graduation. Now, since we hope that there is an effect from college graduation beyond college, we also studied the effect of receiving hope on earnings and unemployment insurance claims. So, to summarize, our quantitative analysis reveals that receiving hope does matter. It contributes to positive academic and labor market outcomes. Now, while our team is quantitative and we love numbers, we also recognize they don't and can't tell the whole story. So it was important to us to go out and have conversations with students and financial aid administrators to get a better understanding of the student experience with hope. And in our conversations with students, it's clear that hope helps. However, the financial aid landscape is pretty complex. And honestly, students weren't always clear about specific hope requirements. In our conversations with financial aid administrators, it was very clear they are very well informed about the financial aid policies and programs. However, we also observed significant variation in terms of access and use of resources across institutions. So, what evidence did we use? We received data from multiple sources in Tennessee, from Tennessee data, student-level data, from the Tennessee Department of Education, the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, the Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities Association. Thank you, Dr. Khan. I saw you over here. And also from the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workplace Education. So, what do we do with all this amazing data? How do we construct our sample? So, at first glance, what do you think? Do all these dots seem comparable? This is a trick question. Yeah, at first glance, it might seem like we should compare all hope recipients, which would be over here to the right on your graphs, to all non-recipients over to the left. But the problem is, if we were to do that, we'd really be comparing apples to oranges. And we don't want to do that. So let's just pretend that this vertical axis through the middle is the hope cutoff to be eligible for hope. So this would be a 3.0 high school GPA. That means everyone to the right has over 3.0, and everyone to the left has under 3.0. Now, the students represented by these yellowish-looking oranges have, let's say they have a 3.8 GPA. They are fundamentally different from students over here represented by the oranges, who, let's say, have a 2.0 GPA. If we were to compare these two groups of students, we would only be comparing those students. We wouldn't be saying anything about the scholarship itself. So to avoid this problem, we need to look at and compare apples to apples. So the apples on our graph are the students who have between, let's say, a 2.9 GPA and a 3.1 GPA. It's fairly safe to say that in terms of academic preparation and motivation, these students are pretty similar. Thus, by focusing on these students, we are able to isolate the effect of the scholarship itself. The results we are about to share with you all come from comparisons of this nature. I'm now going to hand it over to my colleague Shenjun, who's going to share our findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. With that foundation in place, let's now turn to the evidence. I'll begin by sharing what we found in the statewide data system, and then my colleagues will build upon that with perspectives from students and financial aid administrators. So let's start with what happens in college. In our analysis of the statewide data, we find that hope recipients are more likely to enter college than their comparable non-recipients, as we're comparing apples to apples. They're also more likely to persist, meaning to come back for a second year in college. But when we break it down by college sectors, we see that HOPE recipients are much more likely to enter a four-year institution. They also complete bachelor's degree at a significantly higher probability than comparable non-recipients. One nuance is that we don't actually see an increase in transfer from 2-year to 4-year. What that tells us is HOPE's academic benefits operates primarily through the initial pathway. It steers students toward the 4-year programs from the beginning, and those students finish. So we know HOPE recipients are high achievers, and historically, 4-year programs bring stronger social and economic benefits, so that makes sense. But we also wanted to clarify here that we don't see any decrease in associate's degree completion. We do observe HOPE recipients are less likely to enter a 2-year program, but when they do, their probability of completing associate's degree maintains on a similar level as comparable non-recipients. So in general, we observe stronger college enrollment and persistence effect. We can also say that HOPE creates this shift toward 4-year pathway, while its effect on 2-year degrees is minimal. So you might wonder, do these academic benefits actually translate into economic returns? In our analysis, we see that HOPE recipients' earnings premium overall is modest. HOPE recipients are stronger students overall, and the scholarship signals that. But the earnings boost we can confidently attribute to the scholarship alone is modest, and that's the overall picture. But when we look at who benefits the most, the pattern changes a little bit. So here, what you're seeing here is female HOPE recipients' earnings premiums. And you can see we see a pretty clear and meaningful earnings boost for them from 5 to 8 years after high school graduation, and again at the 10-year mark. The advantage starts around $4,000 in year 5 and grows to almost $7,000 a decade out. So we can say that HOPE isn't just a signal of the pre-existing ability. It is actually generating real economic returns, and HOPE is also narrowing gender gaps in the labor market outcomes.
Ms. Yu, just real quick, thank you for this. Just so I can understand this graph, let's say in year 4 years out since high school graduation, that is a comparison between students who are just on that bubble and got the HOPE versus those who did not. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you. So for whatever reason, 4 years since high school graduation, those who did not get the HOPE had lower wage, lower salary than those who did get HOPE. One might presume that's because those students who didn't get HOPE were probably in the workforce a little sooner.
Yes, yes, that's the main reason we are thinking there, because they're still in college and not really in the workforce.
Okay, thank you.
Right. And yes, so beyond earnings, we also look at employment stability. Specifically, we look at filing for unemployment insurance. We do observe that HOPE recipients are less likely to receive unemployment insurance. But we also wanted to clarify here that in 2020 and 2021, the HOPE eligibility requirements were lifted, along with many changes, which makes it hard to say the true impact. We're working on incorporating more years and cohorts data for the longitudinal trends. So stepping back, to sum up the statewide picture, students who receive the HOPE scholarship see a clear and consistent benefits. With their stronger academic outcomes, a clear path into 4-year programs, and durable economic returns through higher in-state wages and steadier employment. Some of those benefits become even more clearer for certain populations. Here we are focusing on what receiving the scholarship delivers. The full analysis of this and the renewal structure is presented in the upcoming white papers. And again, all these estimates we've been looking at only reflect students near the eligibility thresholds, which helps us, which is where our data let us make the cleanest apples-to-apples comparison and helps us understand better about what is really happening across the state. So to add more context behind those trends and to better understand why some of these patterns exist, I'll now hand it over to Josh, who will share what we heard directly from students.
Before you leave the podium, could you back that slide up?
This slide?
Yes. Are you able to do the calculation of what those added wage premiums mean in terms of tax dollars that are returned to the state? And what I'm looking for is, does the Hope wind up paying for itself in an economic return to the state?
That is an important question. As I know of, our current analysis hasn't included that part, but we might be able to look into that.
Well, I
And-
think our stewards of tax dollars in the legislature would find it exciting to know that they're not just making a payment out, it is an investment, and that return on investment more than exceeds the payout. Reasonable hypothesis to test? Question mark.
I think that's where our own staff can come in here with that and like take this analysis and take what those real economic returns are. What is the again the expected increase, that coefficient, and apply some analysis to actually say what this is. And I think that's something that we can certainly do, and I think it's a really good direction to put us, because we will get that level of detail, correct? Like what the real economic returns are.
Yes.
That's something that we'll have in our white papers for that we can then use that to apply and say, hey, this is really important and is paying for itself as well.
Can I maybe ask one other question before you leave? The last point here around female recipients, do you have data on maybe other minority groups and how?
Yeah, we do have. We look at multiple gender, race, ethnicity, and for Renew, we also look at their income background, like Pell eligible recipients. But the results we're presenting here really focus on those groups with the most significant outcomes. And the full set of results will definitely present that in the white papers. Thank you.
Wait a minute, one more question. Can you go back a couple of slides to the income variations? So this demonstrates, as Dr. Gentile was saying, that those who received or did not receive the Hope Scholarship performed more poorly in terms of income generation than those that received, correct? And this is looking at those that were apples around the 3.0.
Yes, they're right, yeah.
Is there an argument to be made that those who fell just short of the 3.0 might have had better success also had they received the Hope Scholarship?
Yes, because we wanted to make the most rigorous claim we could. So the sample we have here is really like those small groups close to the eligibility thresholds. And in this setting, in the quasi-experimental setting, the result we are expecting is for those students who are really close to the threshold, if they get the scholarship, they are going to perform better.
So the argument then is that cutoff could perhaps be lowered slightly.
That would be a different setting. Like currently, we could only examine the existing threshold. So, yeah, if in the coming years the threshold changes, we will be able to see that if a different threshold really make a difference. But with the current setting, it could be only speculations.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to speculate. If I could, and I do require a high bar. But like this does tell me that if the GPA cutoff was 2.95, a student who wouldn't have qualified at between 295 and 30, they would have higher wage income. I'm not in a position right now of expanding the lottery program, but it would add to that argument.
But if you could have evidence that there's a payback on that, you reduce the risk that we're asking the legislature to make in the appropriation.
That's right.
Good.
Just to add, I think, Dr. Gentile, you're hitting that point exactly right. Like, the students within that bandwidth, to your question, those apples that are being compared to the apples above the threshold, I think it's pretty fair to say that we would, essentially this design is meant to isolate what would happen to those students if they were on the other side of that threshold. And so as long as they're within that range of, we'll say like a 2.8-ish or so, those are probably like our comparison students in here. And so we would be able to speculate that, yeah, we would expect them to see better economic outcomes if the outcome were lowered, yeah. So. Okay, all right. I'm going to put on my qualitative research hat now and talk to you about our conversations with students. First, I want to say thank you to my colleagues and good morning to all of you. I do have the privilege today to talk to you about some conversations that we recently had with students who had received the HOPE Scholarship. So everybody we talked to had received the HOPE Scholarship. Those conversations were guided by the question that you see here. How do students make sense of their state-sponsored merit-based aid? And really, we're talking about the HOPE program. And in these conversations, we wanted to be able to understand how HOPE shaped student choices, their behavior, and their plans for the future. To do this, we contacted a random sample of students. We had conversations with about 20 different students, and you can see their basic demographic characteristics on the screen there. But what I want to talk to you about is the experiences that they brought to the conversations that you don't see. So by the time we talked to them, we ended up speaking with students who had already graduated, either with an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. But we also talked to students who had stopped out of higher education altogether. And again, remember, they had received the HOPE Scholarship. We talked to students who had transferred from 2 years to 4 years. We talked to a few students that had transferred from a Tennessee institution out of state to a different institution, and they still spoke with us. We talked to some students who had retained their HOPE Scholarship the whole time they were enrolled. We talked to some who had lost it. Of those who had lost it, some of them regained it later, some of them did not. What we want to highlight here is that we talked to a range of different students with a range of experiences at different points in their journeys, many of which had different outcomes. And so what did we learn from those students? Well, encouragingly, they all remembered receiving support from the state of Tennessee, which was excellent to hear, and they all indicated that it had a positive impact on their experience. And going back to your comments earlier, Chair Scarlett, I did not know you were going to talk about pathways and doors, but I think that queued this up really well. Because what we found pretty quickly is that the impact and the way in which it impacted students varied quite a bit. So for some, you can think of them as going down a college path. They were planning to do that their whole lives. That was something they were going to do. But they indicated that HOPE made it easier to do so. And I think that's an excellent finding. They talked about how it made college seem less expensive. They felt like less of a burden on their families. And it just made it more realistic and simpler to do so. But again, they were going to go down that path no matter what. But what we found really interesting was we talked to students who kind of had a different experience. And HOPE and other financial aid opened doors that had previously been closed. And so these students talked about, I wasn't going to go to college, but then my counselor told me about HOPE and other programs, and I was able to go to college. Or you might think of another student who was choosing between maybe going to a 2-year because it was more affordable, and HOPE made it more affordable to go into our 4-year institutions like we observed in the quantitative findings. And so you can see the way in which that impact varied. The other thing that we'll take away from here is that this was a really complicated environment for students. And so you can imagine a scenario where these students are all very high achieving, and that means they're eligible for a lot of different types of support, whether it's from us or from other sources. That kind of functions as a blessing and a burden simultaneously, because these students have a lot of options available to them and a lot of support available to them, but it can be quite complicated to keep all of that straight. We have over a dozen programs within the state that we operate, but that doesn't account for things like federal programs, institutional scholarships, private scholarships that these students might be eligible for, loans, work study, all of these common mechanisms that students use to pay for their higher education, all with different deadlines and criteria to do so. Let's see an example of this playing out. So here we have a student saying they give you something called the Tennessee Promise, which is where if you score a certain ACT and you have a certain GPA, they will fund your tuition for certain state schools, and I was eligible for that program. So at a high level, we see a student talking about what they need to do to receive their aid, what it covers for them, and that they were eligible for the program. But the contradiction here is they're calling this Tennessee Promise. This is a student at a four-year institution who was not eligible for Tennessee Promise, and this was a common theme that we had observed in our conversations, is that students have trouble kind of remembering some of the really important details about these programs, including, in this case, the name of the program, with the requirements that they need to meet to continue to receive that aid.
And Josh, I'll just interrupt here as well to remind the group. Can you go back to that slide?
Absolutely.
For Tennessee Promise, there's not an ACT requirement.
Correct.
There's not a GPA requirement beyond satisfactory progress. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, thank you. And so we did want to, given that complexity, we did want to know what students remembered about the HOPE program specifically. That's, again, a big part of our portfolio, and so we really wanted to focus in on that. And again, we had a pretty early positive finding in that students remembered that one of the main requirements that they needed to have was a minimum GPA in college to continue receiving their award. But their level of familiarity with that varied quite a bit. Some students said it was as low as a 2.5, others said they needed to have a 3.75. The actual GPA is 2.75 or 3.0, depending on where you are in your college trajectory. So a pretty wide range of perceptions of that pretty fundamental part of the HOPE program. And let's look at an example. So here, students saying a certain amount of credit hours, you have to have either 2.75 or 3.25, somewhere in there. But I can't remember because the other scholarship I had also had a different GPA requirement. And so this is a pretty representative example of a response that we received. They're pretty close to the GPA. They know it exists, but they have other things that they're thinking about. In this case, a different scholarship with different requirements. But let's compare that to one of the more extreme answers that we received, again, from a HOPE recipient. I don't remember ever having to do anything specifically for it. Did I not? Was I supposed to, now I'm thinking maybe I didn't have it. Am I supposed to, do community service or something? Yeah. And so here we have a student who received the HOPE scholarship, not remembering any of the details that they had to do to continue to receive it. And they're actually adding what we called kind of a bonus requirement in the form of community service. Going back to Dr. Gentile's comments just there, that's part of the Tennessee Promise program, but it is not actually a requirement of the HOPE program. And we heard similar things being echoed throughout some of our conversations with regard to being, oh, I have to be full-time enrolled, not necessarily. So students kind of misunderstanding some of the key policy signals of the HOPE program. I'd also just point out really quickly that no student really talked about any of the other requirements, whether that be from filling out the FAFSA each year to maintaining different enrollment intensities. And we also noted that very few students really indicated anything about the payment increases that juniors and seniors receive at four-year colleges. So if you get to your junior and senior level on the HOPE scholarship, the award amount increases automatically for you. And frankly, no student really talked about that preemptively. And a couple that mentioned it after we asked about it said it was great, but it was kind of an unexpected benefit that helped, but it wasn't something at the forefront of their attention.
Sorry, Josh, I'm going to interrupt you again.
Please.
So that's a feature that he just spoke about that came in play about 10 years ago. HOPE used to be the same level throughout your whole undergraduate experience. 10 years ago, it increased in your junior and senior for a top-up level. The understanding for that passage into law was that students would be incentivized to maintain GPA eligibility if they knew that their HOPE scholarship would increase over time. What Josh is showing here is that, first of all, again, this is qualitative but consistent, that students don't necessarily know what that GPA is, and they were surprised by the top-up as well, so it may not have that incentivizing factor that was initially intended.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh.
Of course, thank you. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that point in a second. I appreciate you bringing it up. And so one of the things that we wanted to ask then is, if that's what they know, where do they get that information? And maybe that can help us fill some of these gaps. So the first thing that I'll highlight here is that students mentioned sources that are pretty unsurprising. I would say most of these were things that we would expect, whether it's high school, family, or basically the internet. In the form of high school, I would highlight counselors, teachers, their peers, and our outreach staff actually were mentioned. The assemblies that they hold, the materials and information sessions that they provide were mentioned. But I want to highlight a counselor here because I think this counselor deserves to be highlighted. The student mentions texting their high school counselor, calling them, going to their office from the time that they applied for college up until after they graduated and even when they were a freshman in college. So this high school counselor is accessible to this high school student after they have gone out the door and moved to a different campus. However, I would say this is an exceptional counselor, and more of the students that we talked to were more likely to mention about their teachers and counselors being quite busy. and being overburdened with a high student workload. And so they had to make, these are the students talking about their counselors, having to make a difficult choice of, I want to focus on the high school students at the margin of graduating high school versus those who were college bound, because they were going to be successful and they were kind of left to their own devices in some of those cases. So not everybody had that excellent counselor. When we talk about family, again, this could be parents, guardians, siblings. Someone even mentioned a really cool aunt that was helpful. These were sources of information, encouragement, support. They were very accessible. They were very informal. But again, not everybody has that if you're a first-generation student, right? If you don't have somebody in your family that has gone down that path or could provide that information, this is something that you couldn't rely upon. And so in those cases, and frankly, pretty much every student talked about using the internet in some form or shape. They're quite remarkable in what they can figure out. And so what I want to highlight here, this is from a student who had recently lost their Hope Scholarship by the time we talked to them. So they talked about going into their student portal, they would look at everything, they would read what are the next steps, look at their GPA, compare it to the benchmark, see how far off they are from it, and do those calculations. So this student has clearly demonstrated, I know where to go, I know what to do, I know what is expected of me to get my aid back, but I'd really argue that this is because they were primed and motivated to do so. Right? They had this experience that was, quite frankly, very shocking for them to lose their Hope Scholarship. It was a big deal for them and their family, and so they knew what to do and they were going to do it. And I think this demonstrates that they're capable of understanding the complex design of this program. Other students mentioned automatic scholarship directories where they get automated emails, which I thought was really interesting, college websites, social media pages. But one source that we thought we would hear more about that we didn't were post-secondary financial aid offices. These were often discussed more of when I have a problem, I go to my financial aid office on campus, rather than I go to them for help or support proactively. And I'll let my colleague Jennifer tell us more about that in just a second. Okay. But this is probably the slide that I think maybe you all are most interested in. And what are the takeaways from these conversations? What can we use, especially given kind of the current lottery situation? What might we offer as some takeaways that we would encourage you to think about? The first is to be mindful of the different margins, right? I talked about the making the path easier versus opening a door. You can think about different students being affected in different ways by any potential policy changes. Are we potentially moving a student from college A into college B, or are we potentially shifting a student from college into not college at all if we make a change to the amount of aid that they receive? So be really mindful of the margins of the policy changes and who is going to be affected by them and how. The second, and I think this is a popular sentiment over the last couple of days, simplification. I really encourage that we think about simplifying this whole portfolio, but also the program designs whenever we can. The current model in our country of high tuition, high discount rate assumes that students have a lot of aid available to them, they know about the aid, they receive the aid, and that offsets these higher tuition costs. But if students miss something or if that doesn't operate as intended, that system starts to break down and deteriorate and imposes costs on the students. And so really making sure that we're simplifying the programs, the messaging, the communication strategies will be really essential in whatever changes we make. Alignment, I'll just highlight here, and I think this gets into some of our conversations earlier. This is part of our master plan, so we feel good about highlighting it here as well. But making sure that the program design creates clear, tangible outcomes, things for students to aspire to, that they can grasp onto and understand in the context of their journey. And I want to highlight a quote here about somebody talking about the Hope GPA requirement because it affected their major. I knew the classes in Major A, they were hard, and I opted for more of the less in-depth classes in Major B, so my grades weren't as low. And so what we have here is a student making what is perfectly a rational choice today to keep their Hope Scholarship. But what I would tell you is that I masked the majors here to protect students' identity. Major A has more lucrative long-term economic prospects. And so we have kind of a student making a choice to keep their scholarship today that might lead to a suboptimal decision for the future. And so really thinking about how can we communicate our objectives through the design of these programs. The last piece is to raise awareness and salience. So we talked about some of those gaps earlier. I think leveraging those early sources, whether it's high schools, families, the internet, also increasing proactive support to students once they get to campus. I think all of these are ways to raise awareness about the Hope Scholarship, but also to promote salience. And so what I mean by this is a student is talking about the biggest scholarship is their institutional scholarship, which is supposed to cover everything. Where it gets more complicated, when you go to your financial aid packages, there's 10 scholarships in there. So I'm like, okay, how does this impact that scholarship? What this demonstrates is this is a complicated environment, and so students filter. And this is a perfectly rational choice of, I'm going to filter on the biggest one because it's got the most dollars when I log into my portal. But for us, HOPE is probably one of our most powerful policy levers to induce students to go to college, be successful in college, and set themselves up for long-term economic outcomes. And so making sure that we make sure that HOPE matters to students, especially because there's a lot of attention on it right now with the funding situation, and they take away exactly what they need to do to receive their aid and set themselves up for the best future scenarios. So with that, I'll hand it back over to my colleague Jennifer. We will have time for questions at the end as well if you all would like to ask.
Thanks, Josh. So we spoke with financial aid administrators from TCATs, community colleges, private and public universities. And in all of our conversations, it was really clear to us that they are very well informed about state and federal financial aid policies and programs, and they're also passionate about supporting students. But two main challenges really stood out. One, some institutions have some pretty important resource constraints. Also, some students, or perhaps many, do not always seem to engage with the outreach efforts from financial aid offices. So there's definitely an opportunity to improve communication about HOPE. There's substantial confusion, as Josh mentioned, about the GPA margin, and once you're in college, you have to maintain a GPA. At the first checkpoint, that's a 2.75. So I'll go ahead and read this quote from one of the financial aid administrators. To maintain HOPE, 2.75 is a high GPA. People are like, so it's a C average? No, it's more like a B average with like 2 Cs. It's a merit-based scholarship, and they lose that part, and they conflate it with promise. You also saw that in Josh's presentation. There's a lot of misunderstanding. Also, the way the GPA calculation works is different. So generally speaking, and as Josh pointed out, students typically don't understand the nuances, or they're not clear about the nuances of the maintaining eligibility requirements. So that supports the idea of simplifying these requirements. We have seen many best practices throughout our conversations, heard about them, and there's many efforts to support student success through technology, such as tracking apps, which send out alerts if a student seems like they're not going to do well in their classes, or if a student wants to drop a class. There are also college success advisors in some of the community colleges, and we also heard about one-stop shops that also seem like a pretty great and efficient way to get some student questions answered across departments. In all of our conversations with the financial aid administrators, we would ask them, what's the most common question you get? We would always receive the same answer. Does anyone want to guess what the most common question financial aid administrators get? Go ahead, guess. I think some of you might know. So close. They're like, where's my money? All the time. And so tying that back into Josh's conversations with students, it seems like students wait until there's a problem, like how do I get more money or where's my money, before they come to the financial aid office. So how can we help mitigate that? We saw across institutions that there was significant variation in how they used and the access to resources. So in one focus group, we had an administrator say, we have an alert system. A student needs permission to drop a class. And another administrator on the other side of the circle was like, what? We don't have that. They're not required to come in and see us before they drop. I wish they were. Another financial aid administrator shared with us that at the time of our conversation, they were testing out an algorithm to track students and send an alert so that they could proactively engage with the student before they were in danger of failing a class. What really shone through in all of our conversations with financial aid administrators is that they're really passionate about what they do. And while many confessed to us that they kind of just fell into the job initially, they also said they have stayed in this field as financial aid administrators because they see the importance of what they do to help students keep their financial aid in order to pursue their educational dreams. And many financial administrators also transmitted that they view it as supporting the whole student, and they took a holistic approach to their work. For example, in this quote, "Generally, if a student comes to me, I'm not going to let them leave until their issue is resolved. Even if it turns out it's not a financial aid issue, it's with academics or academic affairs." So the question is, how can we leverage this positive energy and interest in supporting students? Financial administrators here in Tennessee, in all of our conversations, echoed what we also see in national trends with financial administrators, and they express a need for additional support, particularly in resources such as additional personnel, more time, and technology to support their efforts to better serve students. So, going back to the considerations, as Josh shared with us, our conversations with financial aid administrators support and echo many of those same recommendations. Simplifying and raising awareness would greatly help. Students are not aware, especially of not just the changing GPA requirement over time, but the award amounts change over time. And then shifting to more proactive engagement, it would be really beneficial to interact with students from the financial aid administrator office beyond orientation. And sometimes students aren't always engaging in those efforts. And also it seems like it would really help to provide additional support during peak times, such as registration periods, FAFSA filing deadlines, and so forth. And Tennessee could also help facilitate opportunities to share best practices within and across networks, which is already happening among some institutions. And also, some institutions have found ways to effectively use tracking apps to better serve students. So, where do we go from here? So we are currently working on producing policy memos and putting together policy recommendations with THEC this summer regarding the lottery portfolio. This will include thoughts on what seems to be working well and supporting a better understanding of financial aid policy through our conversations with students and financial aid administrators. We will also complete our analysis of Hope Renewal on student outcomes, explore additional academic and economic outcomes, as well as additional subgroups to your question earlier, and update the analyses with the final additional year of Tennessee data. So, to recap, yes, receiving Tennessee Hope does matter to students. However, as we are all aware of, especially now at the end of our presentation, the landscape, the financial aid landscape is very complex. So there's opportunities to simplify policy, increase awareness, and provide greater support to our financial aid administrators to better serve students in Tennessee. And so, last but not least, I'd like to give many thanks to our fantastic research practice partnership here at THEC, especially Amanda and Paige. Also, thanks to all of you for inviting us to come speak today. And thanks to everyone in the room for sticking with us so long close to lunchtime. And we are now happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate this. Paige, do you have any final words before we open up for questions?
I do, in fact, to help you while you all are thinking of your questions. Just wanted to summarize a couple main points here. They're not allowed to say it because they're academics, and so they hold themselves to very high standards. I will say the quasi-experimental method that they've done here in the quantitative work is as close as we can get in higher education research to saying that the Hope Scholarship causes these outcomes. So whether that's the job stability around the unemployment claims or the wage claims, they have done the work that is as most rigorous as we can possibly get without randomly assigning students to be getting the Hope Scholarship or not, which I think most of us would agree is probably not an ethical option to pursue. From our qualitative work, simplification of the portfolio. As we move through and into the fall and think about these recommendations, I think simplification will come up again and again. And so we're excited to hear that that was what we surfaced in this qualitative work from students and from our campuses. Students need more support for messaging. I think that is something we've all known, and thinking about ways to do that to help them better understand these scholarships will be an important thing to think about as we move forward. And then finally, just want to drive home, the intended outcomes here are a series of white papers that we will be working on and aim to publish, again, alongside this broader work around the lottery study. And this is not the end. The team has quite a bit of work to do from here. With that, I will let them take your questions.
Thank you again. Very much appreciated. What sort of questions does the commission have? Yes, Commissioner Stafford?
No question, but this was very informative, very helpful. I do appreciate all the research and the time that you put into it. This is quite beneficial. Thank you.
Can you maybe speak to timeline for kind of you mentioned there's several things that come out of this. What does that look like from a timeline standpoint?
Yeah, so I'm going to commit them to things that they have not allowed me to commit them to, so this is going to be fun. I think we're looking around like a September timeline for those series of white papers. We've had really great partnerships, but as with all things, getting data from a variety of government agencies takes time. So we're aiming for September, and then those will be incorporated in the part of the broader lottery study that THEC staff are working on, which will be, again, like toward the end of this calendar year that we'll be looking at that.
A point I want to put a emphasis on, and is Lou Hanneman in the room? Okay, well, I'm about to say something nice about Lou. Lou has been really carrying the torch in our office, like about this current situation that we're in right now, and that is, yes, we might need to save some money, and you could haircut your way to that, but also taking a step back and just looking at all of our programs, all dozen plus of our programs, how can we simplify? How can we make this better for the student experience? Simplifying itself or aligning different criteria may not itself be a money saver. It wouldn't necessarily save money, but this provides us an opportunity to take this feedback that we've heard from students now and from faculty and from staff, and looking at more than just how can we tinker scholarships to get us under a funding threshold. So thank you, and thank you to Lou, who I know is here somewhere.
And to that point, I would just add, simplification can mean removing a requirement altogether, or it can mean making it easier to understand said requirement, right? So either of those would achieve that same end. I think that's an important point.
I have a couple comments and probably more comments than questions, but first of all, really thank you very much for taking the time to do this sort of work, because I think it's very important, and what you shared is validating some challenges that I think we continue to have as a state and a country. But I just want to clarify something. Going back to the economic piece, what I understood from Hope is that we saw modest gains in increase in income for students with a higher percentage or number for female students. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to think about the modest gains there. And I go back to the question that Commissioner Smith asked about the true economic value of providing hope to these students if they're only receiving modest gains for an income perspective. So I think to really reinforce the value of hope would be to understand what is it really providing back to the state in some ways. But you also brought up, as I was thinking about this stuff, is the high tuition, high discount. I think it's a little bit absurd how much it costs to go to college these days. I know I'm sure the CFOs in here are like, oh, great, she's talking again. But it's so expensive. And so we have created these environments where it's so expensive to go on to post-secondary, and to be able to pay that back with or without discounts is really, really hard. We're lucky, I think, with the public institutions because generally they tend to be less expensive than our private institutions. But hope is given to everyone. It doesn't have to just be a private institution. Yeah. It just strikes me that we've created a system, and I wouldn't even know how to think about getting out of it, where we've created a system where we have a high cost, high discount. We don't have the wages at a national level that are really helping enable students to be able to get out of a debt situation. We have a really good story here at Austin Peay State University with having no debt coming out, but it's not something that we're hearing on a regular basis, and it goes back to that perception problem. And the ease of access. Talked earlier about the opening up the doors. We're doing a great job of opening up the doors. What are all the different pathways that students can go down? I do think that we have a big opportunity to really talk about how do we simplify everything else that goes along with this for students and for families. And almost every year, we talk about how important it is to have advisors. And I'm not talking about the registrar advisors. I'm talking about an intentional person, a person that's being very intentional about having an honest conversation with the student and their family about what's life after high school. It's too confusing. I mean, you listed off, we saw earlier, all the different types of scholarships that exist, and that's just at the state level. And then you've got the public, the institution dollars, you've got private scholarship dollars. For families, it's confusing. And I think we also get stuck on names, like, how do you simplify this so it's very easy for a student to understand where could they go and how can they take advantage of the dollars that exist? And we tend to celebrate those who are very low income and are very highly successful in academics. Is that where we should be playing? How do we bring all the apples that are in the middle up further so they're actually able to be more successful? And I'm just rolling. So those are my comments. Yes, Commissioner Smith.
I don't think it's a coincidence that yesterday, as part of a sidebar conversation, we talked about financial literacy. And through your presentation, I kept thinking about how dependent we've made it that the student knows things that at 18 they don't know. And I'd like to see us push that, and that's K-12 as well as, say, a freshman experience, to improve the overall financial literacy of our population. And it pays dividends in work like this.
It absolutely does. Any other comments or questions?
So I would be correct in saying 2 takeaways would be, if you're a Hope Scholarship recipient, you are going to have a better chance to get a job, and you're going to have a better chance to have a better salary than those who do not participate in the program. Would that be a fair assessment? Now, the reason I make that point, and I've preached this sermon before, and I'll just do it one more time, I think that we have to be a little bit cautious on saying, oh, well, the magnitude of salaries and base everything on salary outcomes, because if we did that, we would certainly be not taking into account some key parts of our society: elementary school teachers, social workers, others who contribute a great deal, but aren't going to have salaries that just match up with some other professions. Doesn't mean those jobs aren't important. Obviously, we all know that they are. So I just want to toss that out for consideration as we begin to look at numbers across the spectrum.
Treasurer?
Yeah, I'll just comment on the funding side, which is different from what y'all have been working on. And I'm going to be looking very closely at your research because it's very intriguing and obviously very good. But on the funding side of this, we in Tennessee and elsewhere throughout the nation, I think when you have programs like the HOPE program, you're going to have to be looking not so much to cut your way out of it, but to perhaps figure out an income stream where you can establish an endowment for that will sustain it over the longer term. Of course, the Promise program is the model of that, where in the Treasury Department, I'm the chair of the Tennessee Promise Endowment Fund Scholarship Board, and we invest the money. We have about $1 billion of lottery proceeds that are in this fund now that we manage in equities and in debt securities to produce, and we've been able to produce over the multi-year history of the Promise program all of the money necessary for the administration and all the money necessary for the scholarships has come not from general fund taxpayer dollars, but from those investment dollars. And I've said for some time that the Hope Scholarship was going to need to transition to a model like that. Now, that's not going to be as easily achievable now because we've had a major disruption in the gaming market because everybody has a supercomputer in their pocket these days, and it is totally disrupted the gaming market as we knew it before. But we were able to establish the Tennessee Promise in good stead before then. But I think we can do the same thing again for the Hope Scholarship Program. It may take longer, and it may take more effort. It may take a more disciplined effort on the part of state government. Like, for instance, on the State Building Commission, we regularly see state governments sell surplus property, what is alleged to be surplus property and everything. And now that money, kind of floats through the Ethernet of the state budget, and it needs to be applied to long-term things that, as Dr. Smith was pointing out, hopefully make a difference in the lives of Tennesseans and the quality of their lives and the per capita income that they and their families enjoy. So from that standpoint, I just point out that we're entering another phase of the Hope Scholarship on the funding side, and that is we're going to need to be a lot more disciplined about what we're doing in the future, in terms of what we're putting aside for it and how we're investing going forward. I say all that against the background of, in the Treasury Department, we manage the largest debt of the state of Tennessee, which is the debt of the pension fund of the state, and in the billions of dollars. Now, luckily, we have about 98% of the assets necessary to sustain that on hand, so the net liability is much less and everything. But, those things are not a set-piece chess game, and they can change on you very quickly. And as a result, we have a situation where going forward, we're going to be functioning against the cliff of about a $35 to $36 trillion national debt that we now have in the United States. And that's going to have an effect over the long-term future of programs like the Hope Scholarship and the Tennessee Promise, the pension fund of the state, other things like that. These are all issues that we're acutely aware of in the Treasury Department, and we work on every day. So from that standpoint, we look forward to working with Dr. Gentile and his staff and with the universities and y'all on a future solution for hope on all sides of the equation. Thank you.
Any last comments or questions? Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. Okay. We are at our final agenda item, which is other business. Is there any other business anyone would like to bring up? Dr. Gentile?
I know I have one thing regarding when best to have commission meeting dates, but also recognize that Commissioner Rader, you asked me to share some information with the commission for conversation at this time here. I yield to you.
I just sent around 2 articles, one article and one chart as it relates to the costs, and I couldn't share the chairwoman's comments as it relates to runaway costs and the expense that it requires, our students to go to higher education and get, some sort of a degree in Tennessee now, especially in the economic times that we have. I feel like, routinely we get requests here in this commission to raise costs and increase fees on students. And I think that what you see in the data, and I look forward to the executive director's comments about the article, but the article, from the Associated Press, which we hope was, somewhat well-researched, suggests that 1 in 4 Tennesseans are defaulting on their student loans, and that is extraordinarily alarming to me. And it's alarming as it relates to, number one, the continued increases that we get on tuition every year from the universities. But number two, it shows that these are real costs that real students are incurring, and a lot of them can't afford it. And so the question then becomes, why are they defaulting? If that high, 25% are, is it one, because the product that we are giving or we are encouraging them to undergo in terms of a degree, and what kind of degree is paying off for them in the long term? And not only are they not able to pay for what they just bought, but they can't pay to actually provide a standard of living for their family and their children that they deserve. And so all of that seriously concerns me. The chart that I asked to share also suggested that college tuition and college textbooks are up 200%. So we are increasing the prices over the last 6 years 200%. And the only thing that outpaces that are hospital services. And at least for hospital services, we are seeing value. Like, we are living longer. And I just have concerns that we're not seeing the same type of value and return on investment for the increased costs that we're continuing to ask these students to incur. And so I have concerns on all of those things. And that's why I asked to share that in regular business. It's why I unfortunately had issues with the funding formula that we voted on earlier. And I would just encourage this entire commission and everybody in Tennessee to be mindful of all of the expenses that we're continuing to try to pass on to the students, and that they are struggling to keep up.
Thank you, Commissioner Rader, for that. For context for those in the audience, and also provide some background information, there was that article from the Associated Press about cohort default rates. We routinely collect cohort default rates. When I was the fiscal analyst, it was one of my annual jobs to do so. Come the pandemic, the federal government stopped naming defaults. They gave reprieve to those who've been borrowing, and so we have no default rate data as of right now. I did reach out to the Associated Press journalists to ask them where they did get that information. We think it'll be provided publicly later this year. Some context, though. Of our public institutions, President Licari mentioned how much are taking out debt. About 3% of our community college students, 3% take out debt. About a third of our undergraduate students take out debt at our public universities. When we were last collecting data, our public universities, it was about 1 in 10 students had a default. For our community colleges, slightly higher. I'm not surprised by the 1 in 4 measure, although I am waiting to see that data when it comes in. And when we get that data, we'll share it out. That data also does capture proprietary institutions that traditionally have higher default rates. I'm putting that context out there just to say it's there. But also what I am concerned about is that the federal government went a long time without expecting students or former students, graduates, former students, non-graduates, to actually pay their debt. And I am very concerned in Tennessee and across the country at that switch to now having that expectation may cause higher defaults of students across the country just because they had not been used to making that. So we will be tracking that, and we'll share it out as we have that data. But to your point about the overarching costs, it came up independently. Josh mentioned it, Commissioner Scarlett just now. But we are in higher education, and very similar to healthcare, high cost, high discount rate. And that has benefits to students who are getting that discount. The net price has been flat relative to inflation here in Tennessee over the last about 8 years. But it's confusing, and for students who don't get that discount, they're bearing that cost, and then they have trouble navigating financial aid requirements, et cetera. So we do make it confusing. By we, I mean everyone in the country when it comes to the cost of higher education. Making sure that default rates aren't increasing and in fact are decreasing needs to be something that we monitor here as a commission. That's all I have on that, but I have other business too.
I just have one question, I guess. I know last year about this time, it was unveiled, the direct admissions pilot program, and I didn't know if you would mind providing an update and how that looked for the class of 2026, but how that looks moving forward for the class of 2027.
Yeah, with the direct admission, we are still under the research and evaluation of that. Dr. Taylor Odell, who's presented to this body before, and we're waiting for enrollment to come in, and then analysis of that. We'll know more in the spring. We did commit to doing a second year of it until we had evaluation of how that's actually going on the ground. That was in conversations with the governor's office, whose letter goes out, and all high school seniors are included in that this year. So there will be a second round, but we are in a wait and see approach. Did it work? Was it effective? If it was, is this something to continue going forward? If it wasn't, is there some program design issues there, or should we alter and go a different direction? So right now we're still in a wait and see, but have committed to that second year until we get more feedback on it.
Before you go off that subject for a second, for those that were in the direct admissions pilot and per the research we just heard, have the advisors at the high school level, but also in the colleges that they're going to, are they set up to be most successful with those students?
The advisors at the college, at the high school level, our team and our statewide services team have done a phenomenal job of making sure, and in partnership with our institutions, that the advisors understood that process. And a benefit to the direct admission and how we executed it here in Tennessee was we added financial aid information as well, to say you are eligible for this financial aid, this institutional aid too. But we also recognize that this pivot in practice could be confusing to high school guidance counselors, so we were proactive in working with those guidance counselors as well. We had another research arm where we actually applied additional advisors to a cohort of students to see if their enrollment behavior changed as well. That'll be part of the evaluation as too. I'll say that the biggest challenge has been in technology and implementation. We learned a lot in that first year. We do have a group of colleges that are advising us on how to make second year better and how to implement it as well. That would be continuously there too. But we're still just making sure that those who are on the receiving end understand what this means and how to utilize it.
I would like to say also, as a follow-up to Commissioner Rader's comments, and he made comments, of course, yesterday during the committee meeting as well, that you know, the outcomes-based formula that we were looking at in committee and we acted on here today is a good piece of work that's been done to update the formula in many respects, but as he's in effect pointing out, in some areas it doesn't go far enough or fast enough. And that is a bottom line matter that I think we ought to consider as a commission going forward. It's on like a 4 or 5 year cycle is what it currently operates on. But there's no reason why within that cycle we can't accelerate consideration from a staff standpoint and even from a commission standpoint of looking at that going forward, because of the issues that I raised earlier about urgency in regard to funding models for some of the things that we do. This is just simply another aspect of that same thing. So I would just say that the commission, you know, staff and the commission itself need to actually accelerate that review process, not in a formal sense of having the meetings that we have with all the people and everything, but getting the word out about Commissioner Rader's position, which is well taken. And then secondly, you know, having some meetings about it from a staff standpoint to begin looking at how we might address that on a much more timely basis during the interim of this next cycle. Lastly, I'll point out that something that I spoke to Dr. Gentile, he spoke with me about yesterday, is that in regard to fees that the universities charge, you know, we recently had a situation where university came forward with a request to exceed the fee levels that had been set, and that was done without the benefit of committee consideration. I would like to call upon the commission to make sure that we have policies in place that say, you know, in the future, we're not going to circumvent the committee system for doing that, first of all, and then secondly, that we're going to have meaningful and meaty criteria that deal with that in terms of, well, we will look at things on a merit basis going forward, because you know, there are issues about, you know, how far deeply we get into the debt structure of a university and how you get into the budget of the university in that regard, but those things need to all be vetted about what our policy is about addressing those aspects of these things well in advance so that our constituent institutions know exactly what the lay of the land is going to be going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer, and may I make a formal request of you and your team to come back to us at the next commission meeting with a proposed schedule of review and policy?
Absolutely, and that's what I committed to the treasurer yesterday.
Okay. Do you have any other?
I do, yes. I had a phone call from the comptroller a few weeks ago, just asking about the dates of when we have our commission meetings, specifically the days of the week, typically during a session, legislative session, and we may have commission meetings falling on that in February or in April. It's been the long-standing tradition to move those commission meetings toward the end of the week. Of recent, it's been committee meetings on Thursday, commission meetings on Friday, recognizing that sometimes constitutional officers may need to be involved in legislative meetings, and so does THEC staff as well. So the comptroller asked about that. He's typically on his way back home to Northeast Tennessee, where he resides, and works from there on Fridays, so just asking. And I told him, it's been a long time since we've had a conversation about what works best for our members with regards to meetings. We assumed that a Friday commission meeting was best for the parties involved during legislative session, but it may not be. So I just want to pose to the group, what works best for you when it comes to days of the week and convening throughout the year? I had two of our retired members say, "What's a Friday?" Mr. Stafford.
Yeah, I was going to say that I don't have a strong preference. Wednesday, Thursday dates seem to work, I think, better. But you would, noting that it may be a conflict on Wednesdays for commission staff?
I would say if we had a commission meeting in February or in March, next year we have them in, I think, January and April. If we have it in February and in March, having committees on a Wednesday, that tends to be when the education committees meet and where I may be pulled in to those. So I think for our standpoint, avoiding a Wednesday meeting in either of those 2 months is necessary. But in the next year, we don't have those on the calendar.
All right, I would just comment that during the legislative session, it seems to me that Thursday is a good day to try to work, if possible, because normally the House and Senate are having floor sessions on those days in the mornings, and normally they try to adjourn by early afternoon at the latest. So it might work best for us to try to target Thursday. As you point out, committees are very active on Wednesdays and Tuesdays, so.
From my perspective, I think that we should do our best to accommodate the constitutional officers, given their important role in the commission. And from the private sector, as long as we have advance notice, I think I can do a pretty good job of scheduling around whatever works. And I would commend your staff from doing that over the last year. From my perspective, they've given us great lead time, which has been super helpful.
Sounds like Thursdays during legislative session.
Yeah, we might explore if that's the case. And Scott's probably going to strangle me here in a second. But committee meetings and a commission meeting on the same day, perhaps that might work as well. So we'll look into it and we'll communicate back out with you.
I think it is a little bit nicer to have a break between the committees. I'm just throwing it out there. But we have to do what we have to do. Any other business for the commission? Good to the order? Okay, that being said, we are adjourned, and our next meeting will be Thursday, November 5th.